the end of the Chronicles of Narnia, in the last battle, the world ends. The Narnia they knew is brought to an end, and a new Narnia is born. Spoiler alert, in the last battle of Narnia, they all die. The heroes of the story are forced to go through a doorway where there is no coming back. And when they pass through the door, the story is not ended. But they now get to experience Aslan's country, the heaven of the Chronicles of Narnia. And as they experience it, they go from it being a room inside a stable to the world outside of it, to the world beyond where the two worlds of Narnia collide, this world and that of Narnia. With each level they experience, they cry further up and further in. The further they go in, the larger it gets, and the more there is to explore. And this, I think, is a good analogy for our gospel lesson today. Jesus is continuing his Sermon on the Mount. This is now the third week we are in this sermon. The first week we got the Beatitudes, and last week we learned that Jesus is the fulfillment of the law. But rather than releasing us from the law and setting us on our merry way, Jesus this week enhances it, seemingly making it more strict. You have heard it said to the men of old, "You shall not kill, and whoever kills shall be liable to judgment." This is already a rather straightforward and robust law. If you kill someone, then you will be liable to judgment. But then Jesus goes on to make it even more difficult to keep. "But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother shall be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council, and whoever says 'you fool' shall be liable to the hell of fire." In this translation, we miss a bit of the fun in other translations, though they attempt to spare us from an archaic saying that has lost its meaning for us, which is why we get where we get today. But in the NIV, this verse reads, "But I tell you that everyone who is angry with his brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, 'Raka,' is answerable to the court. And anyone who says 'you fool' will be in danger of the fire of hell." Raka means calling someone useless. So we see here a progression of anger, being angry, declaring them worthless, and then beginning to call them names. This progression gets the person involved in this line of thinking further and further away from acknowledging the love of God for their neighbor. This is the opposite of further up and further in of Aslan's country. This is more like further out and further away. Jesus is cluing us into the way heaven works here. He is telling us that rather than simply being content with keeping a law, we should rather seek to draw further into God by examining our motives as we live our lives. Getting angry with a person is an everyday occurrence. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Someone hurts you in some way. You get angry. Someone does something to you that causes you to look at them in a way that does not acknowledge their dignity as bearers of God's image. Now, in doing this, you are choosing creation over the Creator. You are choosing the shadow over the reality. Right here, we have fallen into idolatry. And if we were to persist in this state, we would be worshiping a false god. This is why Jesus is telling us that we are bringing an offering, that when we bring an offering in this state, it would be better for us if we left it unoffered, and then first go and be reconciled to that brother who's made us angry. Because worshiping in this state of mind is an attempt to rebuild the Tower of Babel. In the Tower of Babel story in Genesis, the people sought to make a name for themselves. That is, they sought to make a name apart from the name that God had already given them, children of God. And they tried through their own cunning to build a tower to heaven so that they could once again attain what they were denied, to be with God. So rather than leaning into their given name and calling upon God to help them in their pitiful state, they sought rather to exclude him from the whole process. What is being done when we attempt to worship God in this fallen state is that with our eyes firmly fixed on the ground and not acknowledging God, even in the face of our fellow man, is that we are trying to satisfy our longing for God by excluding him from it. And the further and further we go away from that acknowledgement of God drives us toward the fire of hell. We head toward the fire of hell because we are designed to pursue the fire of the love of God. And when we reject that, the fire of hell is the only remaining spiritual heat source. This is why Jesus tells us to lay down our offering and then go and reconcile with our brother, the brother who may even have wronged us, to send us down the spiral of hate. But the brother that we too have wronged by denying God and him. When we reconcile, we again set our eyes on God, and then we are able to go beyond creation, pass through the shadow to the reality, to the Creator, to the only person that is worthy of our worship and the only person who can receive our offering. God gives us these opportunities to worship him so that we can be drawn further into himself. He tells us in Psalm 50, "Hear, O my people, and I will speak. O Israel, I will testify against you. I am God, your God. Not for your sacrifices do I rebuke you. Your burnt offerings are continually before me. I will not accept a bull from your house or goats from your folds. For every beast of the forest is mine, the cattle on 1,000 hills. I know all the birds of the hills, and all that moves in the fields is mine. If I were hungry, I would not tell you. Do you think that I eat the flesh of bulls or drink the blood of goats? Offer to God a sacrifice of thanksgiving, and perform your vows to the Most High, and call upon me in the day of trouble. I will deliver you, and you shall glorify me." God does not need the sacrifices we offer him, but he provides the sacrifices for our sake. God does not need us to be here on Sunday to be the fullness of himself. He is God whether we worship him or not. However, he has provided us with the opportunity to worship him so that we may be drawn into him through the worship of him, and that we may come further up and further into him. Jesus provides us with a teaching on his law so that we can learn that it's not in the keeping of the law that we please him. That is, it is not in merely keeping the law that we please him. If that is the extent of our engagement with him, he wants us to draw into him, not just to do what he says. Offer the sacrifice, yes. Perform your vows, yes. But ultimately, call upon him in the day of trouble. Call upon him when the anger strikes. See him in the person who has made you angry. Don't draw your gaze away from him. Look to him in the face of the person who has just wronged you, and then draw into him by calling upon him in your time of need. These rules that Jesus gives us today are not some posted list from an absentee God whose only concern is that we follow them so that he looks good to his creation. He is good whether we keep them or not. So it is not for his sake that we keep them. These rules are set by a God who is here with us and wants us to be with him. Call upon me, and I will deliver you, and you shall glorify me by drawing into me. This is what he wants for us, to be with him. For that is why he made us in the first place. For God did not come into the world to condemn the world, but that the world might be saved through him. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.